You mentioned in your speech that a glimmer of foresight is much better than sort of tons of hindsight. So as you look down the next 5 to 10 years for Singapore, where do you see the potential for new social challenges appearing?
Yeah. I think a few come to mind immediately. The first is, as I was sharing, about the impact of globalization, the tension between those at the top end of the scale, the right end of the bell curve, and the rest who may be, the large bulk who may be in the middle.
Inequality.
Yeah, the gap. I think that will be a big challenge. So people may not be poor by the absolute definition of other countries, but people feel the impact of the gap. And that is something that we need to manage. The other obvious issue that we have to manage is demographics. Some of the things that are happening now will have a great impact on our social service sector in the coming years. For example, some very stark statistics. If 1/3 of our young are not getting married, or they won't get married sometime in their life cycle, that means that in 20, 30 years' time, you have 1/3 of your elderly either living alone or without the extended family support system that we are used to. This poses quite a significant challenge to the way social services may need to be delivered. So these are two of the most important challenges that comes to mind for Singapore.
Great. So the floor is now open. Can I encourage you all to come to the microphone and pose a question, please? If you don't mind, identify yourself and then pose a question to the Minister.
Good afternoon, Minister Chan and Professor Mahbubani and distinguished guests. My name is Chun Sing. I'm an education officer, teacher, and also a grassroots leader in Woodlands. So my question is pretty simple. A few days ago, DPM Taman talked about continuous meritocracy. At the same time, he also talked about creating an inclusive society. So how do we reconcile meritocracy and inclusiveness? And where to strike a balance between these two goals?
Thank you. Meritocracy and inclusiveness.
I don't think there's necessarily a contradiction. First, I would like to look at meritocracy beyond academic excellence alone. I think our definition of meritocracy will have to widen. The concept of meritocracy does not change. It says that if you have the talent, you work hard, you succeed on your own spurs. That transcends just academic subjects, but other people may have different talents in the arts, in the sports, and so forth. Regardless whether is it academics, the arts, the sports, or any other field, so long as you have the talent, you have the will, you have the determination, you work hard at it, the system will allow you to flourish. Then the question is, having flourished, what is our duty to society? If all of us succeeds in our station in life, and yet at the same time remember that we succeeded not just because of our individual efforts, but also because of the opportunities that the society has given us, because we all do not survive in a vacuum. We all survive in a society that interacts with us and gives us those opportunities. If we remember that, then, and if we can remember that it is our duty to give back something to society, then I think we have no problem with people succeeding on the meritocratic system, yet at the same time using their success to build an inclusive society, to care for our fellow men. Because regardless of which society we live in, there will always be people who are successful and people who are less successful. And if you read some of the academics, some will be a bit more cynical and say that, well, some people succeeded because of hard work, some people succeeded because they are plain lucky. Regardless whether they succeeded because of hard work or they are just plain lucky, they succeeded in a context, and that context is the society. It is the substrate upon which their success is built on. For all who have succeeded, if all of us can just remember this, to do something and give back something to society, then I think we will be well on our way of building an inclusive society.
I was quite interested in the role of feedback and how feedback, particularly these days with social media, how the role of feedback sort of comes into play, but particularly because of the growing gap between rich and poor, but also in a lot of cases the people that most need help are not the people who are making a lot of noise. They're quiet in the background, just going on with their lives. So going forward, how do you see, or what do you see are the most effective ways which you're able to get feedback to inform the policies that you plan to develop?
Okay, let me tackle the issue of feedback from a few dimensions. There's one set of loops that has to do with policy making, the feedback loops there. The other one has to do with how we actually execute policies to make sure that the policies are delivered well to achieve those intended outcomes. So let me start with the macro feedback loop. I think the way the social service needs to work is no different from even the military. The military has this famous OODA loop: observe, orient, decide, act, and then you observe again, you orient, you decide, you act. And it's a continuous loop. And this is something that policymakers must always do. After we decided on the policy, we implemented it, we must watch closely the results and then to make the adjustments as necessary. Because along the way there could be unintended consequences, or the policies may not pan out exactly as intended. For example, suppose like this year, we announced a policy change of the qualifying criteria for people to seek help from 2005 to 2007. So prior to the policy announcement and implementation, we would have done our calculations to expect a certain number of additional clients to come forth to seek help or who qualified for help. Having implemented the policy for 6 months to a year, then we need to monitor closely. Have those numbers come about? If the numbers are not what we have expected, if it's lower, then the question is, what happened to those people that we expected them to seek help but have not come to seek help? Maybe there's some problems with the delivery mechanism. Maybe there's some problems with the way the information has been passed to them. Maybe there's a gap somewhere, and we have to then adjust our policy or the execution of our policy. So this is a macro loop, and I always find it useful to use the OODA loop analogy, because it's a constant battle. You always observe, orientate yourself, decide, act, and you observe again. It's a continuous loop. And you must always do that to stay ahead of issues. Now, the other issues that you have brought up about this feedback, and I just follow on from the example that I gave, whereby the numbers who come and seek help does not correspond to the numbers that we have anticipated. So we must ask ourselves the question, why is that so? And very often, you will find that the last mile delivery is the most important. So I give an example. We always aim to help those people from the lower income group. Many of them may not read the newspapers. Many of them may not even speak English, notwithstanding that they have stayed in Singapore for a long while. Then the question is, how then can we bring the message to them and make them aware of the help that can be obtained? So I always joke that there are the false positive and the false negatives when people come and look for help. There will always be people who come and look for help and are very creative, and they may not be deserving of help. But these are usually a very small number, and we hope that they stay small. But these are the false positive. My greater concern is the false negatives. These are people that never come to look for help because they don't know where. And this last mile delivery is a painstaking process. For all the grassroots leaders, they will know that they have to go around to the flats, each and every one, to knock on the door, to find out whether someone is trapped in his own world, in that house or that apartment, without the ability to seek help, and then we have to deliver the help to them. Frankly speaking, if the person can come and look for help, I am less worried, because at least he knows where to look for help. I am most concerned with those who do not even know where to look for help. Then the last thing you mentioned is something about social media. Social media can help us in a few positive ways. One is that it can help us connect our information system and to disseminate the information to the people who can help us deliver those assistance schemes that we have planned for. It is a tremendous advantage. Social media can also help us highlight and feedback to us cases which may require help but may themselves not be able to come forward and seek help. So these are useful ways that social media can help us connect, and we should leverage on this social media positively to help us better deliver the help that we have planned to deliver in the first place. But at the end of the day, I would say that many of the people in Singapore who need help, they are not in the social media space. In fact, a lot of the hard work is really legwork going around every week. Myself personally, as a norm, I will walk around my flats twice a week to say hello to people, to really look at their living conditions, to check whether they are still all right or not. I would feel extremely bad if one of my residents passed away without the neighbors knowing, because it shows that something would have gone wrong with the system of care and concern within the community, and we must always seek to avoid that. Today in Singapore, I can confidently say, compared to the past, we have much more resources to help those people who need help. Our challenge is not just how much resources we have. Our challenge is really about the last mile delivery to get the help to the person who needs it most.